Hey y'all, welcome to Pleiadian Point of View. I'm Peyton, and I'm a Pleiadian channel and starseed coach. So in today's video, the Pleiadians wanted to talk to us a little bit about something we love to do as humans, and that is tune in to external sources of information. Right? We just can't help ourselves. We have got to be on the phone, on social media, watching videos, watching news stories. It's like we can't help ourselves. We are hungry for external information. But in the energies that we are moving into in 2025, many of us are going to start to feel the need to pull back from that. So in today's video, the P's are going to explain what is happening here and why so many of us are putting down the phone, turning off the TV. But before we jump into this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button if you haven't done that yet. So as we move forward into the 2025 energies, many of us are going to start to feel very strongly pulled to put down external sources of information. And this can show up for you in lots of different ways. You may find that you are just over social media. I know that that's happening for a lot of my friends, a lot of the intuitives that I know. They're just feeling over it. You may also experience this as getting more selective with who you are following, with who you are giving your attention to, whose videos you're watching. You may find that a lot of people that you used to love, you used to really vibe with, just aren't resonating with you anymore. So this is something that's going to really be accelerating in the energies of the new year. And what is happening here is a lot of us are being intuitively guided to start relying more on our internal wisdom. So one of the ways that our higher self will nudge us toward this is by encouraging us to put down external sources of information. Just, you may not feel as interested in watching videos anymore, in following people on social media, following people that you've really listened to and followed for years. It may just feel like you're just not in the mood anymore. And there are a couple energetic reasons why this is happening. First off, as we start to step away from external sources of information, our intuition starts to get louder. So if you notice that this is happening to you, that you're just kind of losing interest in following all the stories you used to follow, it may be that your higher self is pulling you to listen to your own wisdom more. And in order for us to hear the intuition, we have to get away from the external noise. So if we are always listening to other people talking, taking in other sources of information, what happens is that is talking over our intuition. It's blocking out our own internal knowingness. So when we are being pulled by our higher self to listen more to our own internal guidance, one of the first things that happens is we start to lose interest in external sources of info. And in these energies, we are going to be very, very pulled to trust our internal knowingness. Because as we start to move away from external sources of information, what you will notice is that your intuition starts to get much louder. And another really cool thing that happens is you start to see through anything that's not in integrity. And one of the hardest things, y'all, over the past couple years is knowing what and who to believe, right? There is so much information that we are flooded with 24/7 as humans. It's really hard to know what is true. Who do we listen to? We have completely conflicting versions of events out there. And so one of the things that has been a big challenge for us, and this is even a huge challenge in the spiritual community, that we have lots of differences in the stories people are telling. One of the ways that we figure out what is true is by starting to listen to our own internal guidance. So that's one of the reasons why many of us are going to feel pulled to pull back from external information, especially any information that you're noticing has the flavor of fear, because that is a sign from our higher self that it disagrees with what we are listening to. And one of the reasons we're being pulled to step away from external information now is because it is fuel for the ego mind. The ego mind loves the distraction, right? It loves to get fired up about those scary stories. It loves to spin us into that mental tailspin. The ego mind likes to wind us up. And when we're listening to external information, we are feeding the ego mind. It just loves all those stories of doom and gloom. We almost can't help ourselves as humans, right? We just tell ourselves we're just going to take a peek at that story about the negative agendas and stories of what is happening. It's almost like that human tendency that you're tempted to look at a car accident when you drive by. We almost can't help ourselves, even though we know we shouldn't do it. And these sources of external information play the same role. They are distraction for the ego mind. So right now, many of us are going to feel very strongly nudged by our intuition to step away from the noise. Because once you put down the phone, all those sources of information that we like to fill our head with, you can hear your inner wisdom much more easily. You'll notice that your intuition, which you may feel like you've struggled to connect with, and I know I hear from so many people that they just can't hear their inner wisdom. They can't hear their guides. Well, as soon as you step away from the noise of the world around you, that inner voice gets much louder. But most of us just can't hear the inner voice because of the noise of all the information sources that are talking to us. Now, another really important thing is happening here. When we are listening to external sources of information, we're buying into someone else's reality, right? Because how many of us turn on sources of information to hear what is happening in the world? Well, guess what? There are infinite versions of what is happening in the world. And the more we are looking at external sources of information, the more we're giving other people the power to dictate our reality. Because they are literally telling us what is happening. Well, there is no one version of what is happening. And so we give up our power as creators the more we are tapping into external sources of information. Now, of course, it is very important what kind of external information we're talking about. If you are tuning into sources of information that empower you, that uplift you, that teach you important tools, spiritual tools, processes that help you in your development, then that is a positive use of external information. As opposed to, it's a very different story when we're tuning into stories of doom and gloom, when we're tuning into stories of negative agendas, when we're tuning into stories that put us in fear. You can see how those would have very different results. So one of my teachers used to say, don't buy into the illusion unless you like it. And so that's kind of the lens that we want to use to determine what sources of information are worth our time. Is that source of information, that video you're watching, that person you're following, even that news story, that story of what's going on in the world, is that reflecting what you want to create in your future? If it is, then that is a positive use of external information. If it is talking about something that is not what you're choosing to create in your future, the more you give your attention to it, the more you feed what you don't want. So we're being called in these energies to be very discerning, right? To give our attention only to sources of information that help us create the future we want to see. And most of us, that's not how we use our external sources of information. We do it to figure out what is happening. And when we do that, we can slide into giving up our power as creators because we're letting someone else tell us what reality is. So this is something we're going to see in the energies of the new year, that we're being pulled to be more selective. That the guides, of course, know we are not going to walk away from all sources of information. It's not really practical for us to do that, but we can get much more selective to start giving our attention to people and platforms that are building the world we want to see, instead of building the old world. Because those versions of reality are very, very different. So the information you are taking in is going to be very important to the future you're creating. So the P's just wanted to bring our attention to this, help us understand what is happening and why it's so important for us to give this a little bit of conscious thought right now to make sure we are putting our attention on what we want to create. So I hope this helps you. Don't forget, hit the subscribe button and the like button if you haven't done that yet. I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.